Welcome to Tally Talks, a podcast to ramble about Tally Hall. I'm your host Emma, and today's episode is sponsored by sleeping. I'm joined by tallyball, and today we're going to be talking about the sun. The sun? The sun.
Hi, I'm Tal. If you know me, it's from the YouTube channel tallyball, where I talk about Tally Hall, analysis of songs, and also talk about the news.
Tal has a video on the channel about Fate of the Stars, and the theory behind it, conversation with the gods, talks about some of the differences between usage of, like, sun, S-O-N, S-U-N,
That's the whole
and
theme.
reference, but tying that theme to Fate of the Stars, which I thought was really cool, and I also love good and evil, so I just really wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, Good and Evil, in my opinion, Good and Evil is the better album, because it has the best concepts. But then again, a lot of the concepts in Good and Evil are actually kind of hidden in Marvin's as well. Like Spring and a Storm and Rule of Everything. A lot of that is kind of a crossover. So it is very cool to see the crossover.
Yeah, overall, what are some of the, like, themes you feel like are carrying between the two?
Well, first of all, like, the stars and the sun. That's definitely a big thing in Rule of Everything and Spring and a Storm. I did a video specifically about why Juno shot at the sun, and that kind of includes the same kind of themes. And I think there's definitely a big thing with Tally Hall about valuing the creation of the universe and giving it to the stars as opposed to giving it to, like, a god. And I think that's something that they've maintained the whole way throughout, which is just more obvious in Good and Evil.
I feel like even that kind of carries into Hawaii Part 2 a bit.
Oh, for sure,
well.
yeah. No, there's definitely a whole, like, otherworldly thing that isn't quite religion in Hawaii Part 2. There's loads you can go into about Hawaii Part 2. I'm yet to do it in actual videos, but I will.
Soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time the sun versus sun usage stuck out to me was actually with Be Born.
Oh, really? I didn't think about that. Yeah, that makes sense.
It was like, oh, that's so clever. Because
Yeah.
it's like, step out to the sun, you're 6 inches away from being one. And
Yeah.
It's like,
You know what? I never noticed that. See, that's what I'm saying. There's so much crossover. Good and Evil, Marvin's. Yeah.
But it is, especially I feel like Spring in a Storm. I mean, definitely Rule of Everything too, but Spring in a Storm is like the one that has like the most hand in hand with good and evil overall.
I mean, Spring and a Storm is about loads of things. I've wanted to make a video about it for a while because it's like one of my favorite Tally Hall songs, Under Fate of the Stars. But there's no, like, you can't really talk about one thing with it. So I'm going to use it in a few different videos. Like I used it in the Rule of Everything one that I did, the one about Juno. And I've also got a video about Mr. Moon coming up, which I'm obviously going to talk about Spring and a Storm in. Which I'm very excited to do that, because that's got loads of other concepts. But yeah, Spring and a Storm is like, it's about a lot of things, but one of them is definitely like the creation of the universe. And it's just cool how it all ties together, because you wouldn't really expect it, especially with them being on different albums.
Right. And all of the albums just definitely having different feels to them, which is why some people prefer Marvin's over Good and Evil.
Yeah.
But it is just so interesting for all of the kind of carrying over between them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to elaborate a bit for if there's people who haven't seen your Fate of the Stars video about kind of the overall theory you've got going there.
Okay, so yeah, the overall theory, and I think I like all these theories as well, is I always check like other people's theories first. I always check Genius, I always check Reddit, but generally it's like I stitch together a few of the things that I like and then roll with it from that. So it's not necessarily like a new theory, I don't think, but it's definitely more expanded on than I've seen it before. But yeah, the whole theory is that Fate of the Stars is a song about a person who's meant to represent humanity, and he's like trying to get to the afterlife, but the sun isn't letting him, and the sun is like meant to be like a representation of God. And so the whole thing is like there's this cycle of the human trying to get to the afterlife and the sun saying, no, you can't do that. And the more I've thought about it as well, the more I realized like maybe I should have put it in this video, but it ties into the rest of the album too, because the whole idea is that the sun isn't letting this human get to the afterlife because there's too much there beyond it, and it would like break the human basically. Like the what's the line? I forgot the line. Through and which all the senses are lost to absurd. That's the whole like. It's basically saying if you manage to go through this, you're gonna lose yourself in the forevermore. And I also like that as well because the whole Fate of the Stars thing is that it's like a cycle of this going through this whole rigmarole of trying to get there and then failing and then getting their memory reset every time and then trying to go again. And it's kind of like a conversation. That's what it is, a back and forth. But at the same time, that kind of Fate of the Stars represents the entirety of good and evil in that kind of cyclical nature. Like, if you think about Fate of the Stars as not like cycles within itself, but at the end of a cycle, where it's like at the end of, okay, you're not allowed to go to the afterlife because you can't know these things, and then you go back to the start of the album, it's like the first song is Never Meant to Know. And Never Meant to Know opens like talking about like the world and the earth and life on earth, because, you know, that's kind of what we are meant to stay at as people. And the sun is stopping us from going and seeing more. And then it's like immediately after that, it's And again, where it talks about the love of the sun. And I think that's kind of where I realized as well that it's like, oh, this is talking about the same thing. Because I noticed from like Fate of the Stars that there's a thing about the sun and then a thing about, you know, the sun being the human sun, being the sun's son, because that's the whole thing with religion. It's like, you're the son of God or whatever. But I never really tied it in until I went through the whole song and then realized it kind of loops all the way back around.
Yeah, and especially like Spring in a Storm with the emphasis that like you came from the stars type thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, the son of the sun. I was like,
oh yeah,
yes.
and Spring in a Storm is also a lot about cycles. It's about like the cycle of life and death, and then it's about like the water cycle and everything. You know, all the rain came down the same. It's like these themes are all the way throughout, and they're just kind of more pronounced in Good and Evil. I mean, even the song right after And is You and Me, which I think could definitely be applied to talking about the same characters in Fate of the Stars. Because what, You and Me divine a circular design? I mean, come on. There's nothing more divine than a god, and the whole conversation is a circular design. Like, it's kind of the whole album is meant to be one long string of theories, and they were kind of there in Marvin's, and Good and Evil just said, okay, let's just make this the whole album.
Yeah. Something else that I find cool, like kind of with you pointing out, like if you listen through Fate of the Stars, then go back to Never Meant to Know, is it almost feels like, you know, Never Meant to Know, you're waking up, you know, and Fate of the Stars definitely feels like it's nighttime.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It's
like,
always that like, you know, the morning and night cycle too.
Yeah, exactly. It's every cycle. I mean, there was going to be a song on it called Night and Light, to be fair. So
Yeah,
and like, I think if I were to look into it more, I would find cycles everywhere. And I think a lot of people gather like a kind of like a love relationship theme from a lot of the songs as well, which I think is very fair. But I think there's lots of different kind of relationships that you can apply those songs to. It would be interesting to go through them all.
Yeah. With that pointed out, I remembered another one of the songs that would have been on Good and Evil, but ended up not making it, was the Tomorrow and Today.
Yeah.
From Edu, too. It's like, oh man, that one's also sort of a bit of a cycle. I mean, more of just things keep happening.
And that's the thing. That's the thing that I love about Tally Hall as well, is because, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the things that I bring up, especially when I tie the two albums together, it like a lot of it will be coincidence, but I don't think all of it can be coincidence.
Right.
So it's like it's hard to tell what is and what isn't. But like the Love of the Sun thing, that can't be a coincidence, because there's literally no other reason for it to be on And. Like there's that line means nothing without Fate of the Stars. So I don't think that's a coincidence, but there's definitely some of it that's a coincidence. But then again, maybe, you know, Freudian slip, maybe it's just all subconscious in Tally Hall's mind, and they just kind of didn't mean to include all these ideas, but they did.
There's some things we are never meant to know, you know?
I know, that's how it is.
But thinking of it too, it's like, yeah, then also with the themes in Hawaii Part 2 as well, you know, there's like different mentions of like, oh yeah, children born of one emotion, you know, Mind Electric, Father Your Honor.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then also just lots of star symbolism there too.
And White Ball, Mr. Moon, it's kind of the same kind of thing. A lot of it, and I guess in Mr. Moon as well, like it's, you know, it's kids talking to the moon. So mentioning that, like, you know, it's kind of like kids are meant to represent the start of life, and it's like there's a cycle of life and there's a cycle of the moon as well. The moon goes through its own cycle. It's like everything's a cycle, and I guess there is definitely a lot. Personally, I think Hawaii Part 2 is also a cycle. Well, I mean, it kind of starts on the same kind of melody that it ends on. Introduction to the Snow and Dream Suite in C Major are like, they have the same thing going there. Especially because the lyrics are kind of flipped. Like, Introduction to the Snow doesn't talk about snow, but Dream Suite in C Major, the opening is talking about the snow. It's like, that's kind of where the loop comes back around and crosses over and ties a knot in the end. And I've got a million theories about Hawaii Part 2 that I think some people have mentioned, most of which I haven't seen people mention, and also some that people just clearly don't agree with. But I have got a full video planned. I'm gonna tackle the entirety of Hawaii Part 2 in one video, at least an overview, and then maybe make more where I go into it a little bit more. But there's definitely a lot of questions about Hawaii Part 2 that I think could be answered if we just looked into it a little bit more.
True. For me, man, if there's anything with the Mind Electric, that's my primary obsession.
Yeah. No, I was saying the Mind Electric is the one where, like, as I'm writing the script, that's the one where I've kind of got the least to say about, because a lot of it is very mumbled and jumbled. So I would love a hand.
I remember something that I found really interesting, just from the Hidden in the Sand Wikipedia. It's just reading that so many different pages over and over again. But for me, it was I remember it was okay, so the Fate of the Stars' original name was Mind Control. Does this have an association with the Mind Electric? And maybe some themes there, some instrumentation.
Yeah.
But I remember then watching your video of a mind being reset, kind of like mind control. No way.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things about the Mind Electric that's... Because, the whole thing about Hawaii Part 2 is Simon's schizophrenic. That's the whole thing. And, obviously, you kind of just run with that because that's what everybody says. But when when I look at the album and I look at, Murders, it's I don't really see the part where it's schizophrenia, personally. I don't see that. And there's also the other side where it's he was framed in the murder or whatever in Murders. And it's then he went and got electroshock therapy and then that made him crazy. And it's I also don't think that makes any sense because, at the end of the song, the last line of the song is never you ponder whether electric calming if you look at it right, which is basically saying, okay, now you don't need to wonder about whether electric can calm you or not because it just did. So it's kind of at the end of the song, no matter what, at the end of the song, he's not crazy anymore. And so I feel he has to start as crazy for that to be a thing. And, yeah, there's lots to be said about it, and that's why I'm making a video.
Yeah. I will definitely be looking forward to that. I love Hawaii Part 2.
Same. It's honestly my favourite. I like it more than Tally Hall. I'm not, it's definitely, it's I'm pretty sure it's my number one listened to album of all time. I'm their number 8. I've got stats.fm for Spotify,
nice.
And I'm their number 8 listener.
Let's go.
So, number 3 for Island to Thyself.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Get that Isle to Myself fan representation.
Oh yeah, I love that song. It's so good.
Yeah, I guess thinking about that, how did you first find Tally Hall / Miracle Musical?
Well, see, when I think really far back, it's probably just The Rule of Everything. I hear all these stories of people who's oh, I listened to Banana Man when I was I remember Shia LaBeouf. I do remember that from when I was in primary school or whatever. But I don't think I ever even watched the video. So I think I got introduced to it through The Rule of Everything, because my first distinct memory of singing a Tally Hall song was when I was in the park at must have been 4 or 5 years ago, with my friends, and I started singing The Rule of Everything, and my friend Tyler, who people from the channel will probably know, was hey, is that The Rule of Everything? And I was yes, that is The Rule of Everything. And then from that point onwards, it was okay, we're gonna be the Tally Hall friends now. And so now, it doesn't matter where we go, we are the two that know Tally Hall.
Nice. Got the lore. But kind of knowing it for a while then.
Yeah, and I've known them for a while. I think Hawaii Part 2, I knew about Hawaii Part 2 because I joined the Tally Hall subreddit at whatever point in time, and people were talking about Dream Suite in C Major, and and to be honest with you, I went to listen to the song, and I listened to the whole album, and I was Dream Suite in C Major, I'm not really, this isn't, why is everyone talking about this so much? I'm happy just listening to Island to Thyself, so I did. I kind of just listened to Island to Thyself for a while, and then the rest of the album started to grow on me. I feel everybody goes through phases of liking Miracle Musical, it always starts with Dream Suite in C Major is the best, and then you get into the Mind Electric, and it's oh my god, the Mind Electric is the best song ever. And then and then you think you mature out of that, and you're oh, everyone talks about the Mind Electric. I like this random song, Island to Thyself, or I like Space Station Level 7. And then you loop back around to no, the Mind Electric is just a good song. And I think that's where it lies.
And then it's just everything's so interconnected too. Mm-hmm. So even if you start getting obsessed with one thing, then you still find yourself back to the Mind Electric or Dream Suite.
Always. And I love it too as well because the album, when you listen to the album, they're all completely different genres in a way. A lot of it is completely different, but it's the same album, like, and you know it's the same. Even if it's not the same musical style, it's still the same style. And it's crazy how just because it was made by the same people and they made it so well, you can make one person like all these genres when they wouldn't like them in any other song. I really like that. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just kind of being able to combine it all together as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's really nice. It's really fun. I was like, for me, I got into the Mind Electric, and then I listened through the whole album, and I just adored the entire album.
Yeah.
There's been the case where, like, I've heard a lot of stories of people where it's like, oh yeah, they had one song and the rest grew on them or something, but for me, it's just like, I listened to the whole thing the whole way through, and I was like, I'm in love with this.
Oh yeah.
This is the only thing I will listen to ever.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an experience. It was a period of my life, like 6 months, where I would just put it on and go to sleep. And I would just listen to the whole album every night, and it never got old. Not once.
Yeah, I still do that with Good and Evil. I use Good and Evil to fall asleep.
That's fair. I definitely don't feel like I listen to as much Tally Hall, because, like, there's not many Miracle Musical songs on my playlists, so because I just listen to the whole album. But, like, there are Tally Hall songs on my playlist, so obviously when they come up, I listen to them. But because I always listen to the entire album of Hawaii Part 2, I always get much more minutes listened to Hawaii Part 2 than I do, like, Good and Evil or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. They all very much belong together.
Yeah, you have to listen to them together. you can't not. Listening to, like, it's like listening to the start of Taken for a Ride. It's like something feels missing.
Right.
Like
right.
it's like oh, something wasn't there before. And it got to a point with that for the Rule of Everything for me as well. It's like I want to hear 13 first. 13. Where is it? Yeah.
Makes me think of the other video. It's so weird that Spotify only displays it as like a few thousand.
Yeah, it's
plays
like
on 13. Like
4,500. I tried to cheat that too. I was like, I've cracked the code. It has to be 30 seconds, so therefore I'm going to listen to it on repeat for an hour. Because like, you know, maybe no one listens to it 3 times in a row, because why the hell would you do that? And I did that, and no different. When I check, it's weird because I'll check my Spotify stats, and it'll say this song appeared 50 times in your last 50 streams, but you've never listened to it before. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure I've listened to it before, and I think you know that. So yeah. Apparently, I've never listened to 13.
Man, so sad.
Mm-hmm. I think 13 is definitely a good addition. I don't know how people got those minutes in it too. It's like, okay, 4,500 people have listened to it, but how? How did they do it? Weird.
Yeah, if it's not picking up for anyone else.
Yeah.
So interesting. It'll be a mystery.
Yeah, maybe
Tally Hall unsolved.
Maybe it needs 24 straight hours listening to it. Maybe that's my next video. Yes. Just put 13 on straight for 24 hours. I would lose my mind probably.
You're like, oh man, this just like minor key version of like the grandfather clock chime. Is like you'll after the 24 hours you'll just never be able to hear a clock again.
No.
Like
it's like when is Rule of Everything gonna start? Come on now. Please let me go.
It was just shy and it just didn't want to show up.
No, it got stage fright and just left. Just didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, I'm curious if you want to elaborate on your video about Ruler of Everything too.
Okay, sure.
Shout out the sun.
Well, okay, first of all, everyone's seen Mark But Evil's video about the Rule of Everything. You know, the Rule of Everything is a song about time. And that's great. And so I was like, okay, I can't make a video about the Rule of Everything alone. So I thought, so what else is there for me to talk about? So I was like, okay, what about Juno? Why did Juno shoot at the sun? And the kind of, I guess, the start of that is, okay, why was Juno shooting at anything in the first place? It's because he was mad. I mean, come on. And that is kind of the Rule of Everything part. So if you haven't seen Mark But Evil's video titled The Rule of Everything is a Song About Time, watch that one first. I basically summarized that in the first few minutes of my video, but you should definitely watch the full thing. But the whole thing is, okay, Juno is this, like, kind of fake person, essentially, and he thinks he's better than he is, and he's all talk. And then time comes down and basically humbles him, and the whole idea is time is the king of everything. It's above everything. It's above the sun, and it reaches everywhere, all at the same time. And then it kind of shows Juno the truth and opens his eyes, and Juno doesn't like that very much because, you know, it makes him, like, cry about himself. That's the whole, you're making me cry, this is the way that I am. And towards the end of the song, he kind of accepts Time's words and that's essentially why he's mad. He's annoyed that his eyes have been opened to everything, and he's no longer just this happy, ignorant guy. And then there's the other part is, okay, why did he shoot at the sun? And that part is from Spring and the Storm and Fate of the Stars. The whole idea of, okay, the sun is the creator, and so if you can't reach time, then you got to reach the next best thing. And I saw this great comment. Hold on, I'm going to try and find it. I saw this great comment someone left about another theory about why he shot at the sun. Yeah, someone also mentioned this thing where it's like, it could also be like a kind of shoot for the stars kind of thing, where it's like, as opposed to just Juno accepting like the words of time and then like kind of succumbing to it, it's like, okay, I'm going to try and fight back. Like, I'm going to try and fight back against my creator, because that's kind of what is happening in Fate of the Stars too. It's like, you're trying to push back, even if they don't know it, you're trying to push back against the sun. And I think that's cool.
Yep. Juno tries to push back against time. Doesn't work. He gets humbled.
Nope, does not work. He tries to trick him. Look at me. I've got a wonderful wife. I've got a powerful job. And then Time's like, no, and he goes, oh yeah, she does criticize me a lot, actually. Yeah. I also love the bit where it's like, where Time says, detective, undercover, brotherhood, objective, a scam. It's like, Time's kind of like, I like the detective part, because it's like Time saying, oh yeah, obviously. Like, it's like a sarcastic, I like the idea of a sarcastic Time. I think that's quite funny.
I think something interesting with the two versions of Sun, something I've noticed is sometimes when I've tried showing ruler of everything to people, or like my sister, I remember like they mishear the beginning line. They're like, why did he shoot his son?
Right, okay, got you. No. I mean, it does repeat it 3 times, to be fair.
Yeah. But I remember that being another thing, too, of, like, the two usages. It's like, wait, what?
Tally Hall definitely like bringing that up. They definitely do. And there's definitely going to be more. I'm sure if you looked into it, the more you looked into it, the more you'd find it. Without a doubt. And another thing I liked about the fact that Juno was, shooting at the sun because the sun created it, but it was really Time's fault. I like that too, because like the whole idea of Spring and a Storm is that the sun kind of can't do anything about it, because the sun, I think I said the line in that I said in the video, is the sun's not conscious, it's simply a creator, and it will create until nothing is left to create. Like, that's the whole kind of thing. It's not an entity, it's just doing what it knows it has to be doing. And it's not going to stop doing that. I mean, like, that's why it doesn't budge against the human in Fate of the Stars, because it knows what it has to do. That's the fate. It's written in the stars, and it has to follow that. Even if it is the star and it controls the fate, it can't change what it controls. It controls everything. And I think that's why I like the line "create until nothing is left to create," because it's kind of like, yeah, that's how the universe is going to go, isn't it? Stars aren't just going to stop burning and making new elements or whatever, not new elements, or forming elements until there's literally nothing left, left to create. And that's kind of the ultimate end of the universe. No matter which way you think it's going to go, it'll end with nothing left.
Tallyball description moment.
Create until nothing is left to create. It's a good line.
Yes. There's so many good lines.
So many good
lines. The Tally Hall related stuff.
Yeah. Like, pretend to recrown the creation is also a good one. Because the whole idea of that is, again, Tally Hall kind of saying, yeah, there's all these religious gods, but in reality, the true creator is the stars and our sun. I mean, it's the only reason we're alive is because of the sun. Well, not the only reason, but if it wasn't there, we wouldn't be here either. It's like, if the stars weren't here, the planet we're standing on wouldn't be here. And it's like, it's almost like a scientific switch on religion. I think that's really cool, because it has all the same ideas. It has the same... I mean, like, people worship the sun. People have always worshipped the sun. We rely upon the sun for its light. I mean, like, when you think of a description of God, you kind of think a lot of similarities with the sun, like, when you really think about it. And I think that's a really good observation, and I think that's really cool that Tally Hall picked up on that and thought it was a good thing to include in the song. But yeah, pretend to recrown the creation is kind of Tally Hall saying, criticizing people for crowning God as the creator of the universe, when in this song they seem to think that it should go back to the universe. It should go to the stars that created it, as opposed to giving it to a religious god. And I think I like that.
Yeah, or thinking that you can like somehow puzzle together things all on your own, I guess, too. Or being like, oh yeah, I know exactly how this all works.
Yeah, it's also like just going against like like, oh, the reason that, we've crowned this as giving it to a god is because we think it's something that we can't see, but it's right in the sky. Like, it's the most obvious thing. Like, that big burning ball that we see literally every day, which is also, like, part of Fate of the Stars, it's like, you see it every day. You're always talking to the sun, in reality. I just think that's something like when you listen to Tally Hall and you listen to you listen to Banana Man, and it's like, yeah, they make songs like that, sure, but there is deep ideas behind some of their stuff, and they can have good ideas. And I think that is the main thing that's kept me hooked on Tally Hall. Like, I love the music, but there's something that I always think the lyrics of a song transcend the music in every way. Like, and all the albums that I love have good lyrics, no matter what.
Yeah. I am curious too, like because you've mentioned like things with like Mr. Moon, but then also the sun. Do you feel like there's an association with sort of those two characters?
I think it's definitely an association, because there is obviously a like, if you bought the Good and Evil CD, there's a Mr. Moon there, but there's also a Mr. Sun. That's a thing. And yeah, I will go into it more in my video, which I have had it scripted for a while, but I'm not yet releasing it because I'm hoping to release something else with it. Which I'm hoping will be really, really cool, and it should be ready to go fairly soon. So we'll see about that. But I definitely think there's association between the ideas of the sun and the moon. In the sense that, like, neither of them really, like, they both represent different things. I don't think that Mr. Moon is a god in the way that the sun is, but I think they definitely have different roles to play. And it like, that's the thing as well, a lot of people don't really realise, like, Mr. Moon is in quite a few songs. He's in Spring in a Storm, but he's also in, like, Go to Bed. Sorry, not Go to Bed, Bring Her Along, my bad. He's in Joe Hawley's Bring Her Along, and he's in, like, Moon Waltz has Mr. Moon speaking in it, which people don't really realise. But the Wise Woman Said I'm Alive part, if you listen really closely, you can hear Mr. Moon in the background, and Joe Hawley is credited in the credits, and Mr. Moon is just like a pitched down Joe Hawley. And so that whole part as well ties in a lot to Spring in a Storm, and that whole part is talking about like a conversation between the planets as opposed to a conversation between like a planet and a human. And yeah, there's a whole load to go into, but it is really interesting, and it does continue all the way throughout any Tally Hall song you look at, and that's why I don't think it could all be coincidence. I really don't.
Yeah, and then we've got Hawaii Part 2 with White Ball.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The
moon is everywhere. The moon is in Tally Hall, the moon is in Joe Hawley, the moon is in Hawaii Part 2, and the moon is in Kojum Dip. It's like it literally doesn't end. It's so cool.
That is the fun part of just everything. It's like it's all so interconnected.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's all these independent projects, but you can still trace everything to each other.
You can still feel that it's the same artist with the same intentions.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's such a big crossover, because by no means is the music similar. Like, I mean, like, you've got Kojum Dip on one end with like heavier like music, and then like you've got like White Ball on the other side, and it's like, but they've such a big crossover audience. Like, think about like Sketches 3D compared to Kojum Dip. It's like that's like it doesn't get much more different than that. But yet the crossover is still there because the art itself kind of transcends that music. And I think that is why so many albums have like crossover of audiences, because it's not necessarily the sound of the music, but it's the intentions of the music, and it's the messages of the music. And that's why I love music more than any other art form. Like, I'm sure like people who are into like paintings will see the same kind of thing, but for me it's just always been music.
Yeah. And music you can listen to anytime.
Exactly. You don't need to walk into school, eating. I literally listen to music all the time. I checked my Spotify stats, and this is including time spent sleeping. I spent a third of my last month listening to music. Which is wild. That's kind of like crazy. Yeah.
That is very impressive.
Yeah, I don't know about impressive. It's just because I do it in the background all the time. Like you said, like it's such an easy art form to enjoy.
Is Island to Thyself like your most listened to Tally Hall related song, or is it?
I think I would check Spotify stats, but Spotify stats does it based on like minutes listened, so it's probably like Dream Suite and C Major, because I listen to the whole album all the time, and Mind Electric and Dream Suite are just the longest ones. Yeah, so the top 2 tracks for my last 4 weeks is the Mind Electric and Dream Suite and C Major. But that's because it's based on minutes listened. If I go to Lifetime, my top Lifetime streams is 10 Hawaii Part 2 songs, then Fate of the Stars, and then Shonda Lullaby. So yeah. Add to thyself 968 streams.
Oh my goodness.
Which it's only beaten by Labyrinth with 1,108. But to be fair, I love Labyrinth. Labyrinth is a really good song. And Labyrinth is a really good song that's easy to listen to outside of a playlist as well. Just like Add to Thyself.
Yeah.
I also don't like all the people who say Labyrinth doesn't deserve to be on the album because it doesn't fit. Oh, just you wait, guys. Just you wait till I drop my video and you realize that that's the whole point. The point is it's not meant to fit. Yeah. I mean, I like in the Fate of the Stars video. There's the line where it like contrasts like human biology with like I don't know, tech or whatever, and it doesn't make any sense, and it completely breaks the structure of the song. And for the background, when I was explaining that, I used the music video of Labyrinth because I think Labyrinth is meant to do the exact same thing. The whole point is like this is meant to break the structure of the album. It's meant to be a completely different character because he's just lost part of himself. You know, he's went and got electroshock therapy, and it's cured his insanity, and now he's lost part of himself. So let's do that in a song.
Yeah, especially with the like 8-bit and music video type thing.
Yeah.
The like electric machinery versus the electricity of a human, I guess. Those type of two themes. And I know that that's kind of, I think what's mentioned for like the theme of the trap as well is kind of the whole, like...
a lot of the trap is kind of a similar kind of, and I also think trap is a lot about growing up too, which is of course going back into the cycle of life. But I'd love to do a video on the trap. Actually, somebody's like sent me a DM on Discord, and they were like, "Hey, I just made a video kind of about the trap. I'm not going to upload it yet, but I thought I'd share it with you." And it was actually pretty good. So the only reason that I haven't done a video on the trap yet, because I was waiting to see if they would upload that one. I don't think they have yet. So if they don't, then I'm going to snap it up and make a video on it. But yeah, I don't want to hog like everyone who can do like when Marketable Evil made this Rule of Everything video, I don't want to make a Rule of Everything video because I don't want to compete with that. But I don't want other people to feel the same about my things, which is why I kind of try and keep mine fairly limited to like my own beliefs. And I hope that people can do their own thing as well if they wanted to. Like, I'm not here to like take over all of the Tally Hall theories. I'm kind of here to start people doing it. I want more people to make, Tally Hall YouTube isn't really that big, and where it is big, it's not big with like Tally Hall analysis really. Like the biggest Tally Hall channels don't really do that until I came along, and that's because I want other people to do it. I want people to start thinking about the music because they've not made content in ages, and that leads to all these people just making up whatever they can. But it's like, you look at the songs. Don't just look past the songs because that's all they've made. Look at the songs. There's so much there that you can get.
Yeah, I definitely have appreciated seeing song theories out there again. Because I feel like people have always made like a handful of them, but it's more of like, it's not like a dedicated Tally Hall location for that. And then it's wild that there's just so many people watching it too. That makes me really happy.
Yeah. Okay, to be fair, I think I've exhausted all the best songs. Don't get me wrong, I've still got loads more to say, but I think the excitement will eventually die down, and then we'll be left with the core Tally Hall fans, and that's where I hope people can start making their own things from. Back when, down where there's not as many people left sitting around Tally Hall YouTube, I think especially with all like the news going on, it's brought a lot of people into it that like they scroll YouTube knowing about Tally Hall, and then they see a Tally Hall video, and that catches their attention. But I think with all the news going on, that's kind of brought all the people in, which I love. I think that's awesome. But it will die down, but I'm hoping to keep as many people as possible.
Yeah. But hey man, when we get new Ito and new Kojum Dip, new videos, new analysis.
Exactly, like when Tally Hall comes back in 2 months, which is definitely going to happen. When the whole band released their third album, Strangers.
Thanks, Matthew Aldridge.
Yeah.
But for real though, he does get a lot of credit for this. I do appreciate it. Yeah. It's really bringing everyone back. Everyone gets to go insane together again.
Exactly. Like I like Matthew Aldridge because he's bringing eyes back to Tally Hall, and sure, it's in like a kind of, it's not very honest way, I suppose, because it's all just hype, whatever. But I get it. Like when I make a video on Tally Hall news, I like to hype things up a bit because it's exciting. You know what I mean? Like, it is just more fun to say this band hasn't done anything in 13 years. Let's go a little bit crazy together. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Because you've mentioned like listening to their like knowing of their music for about 4 or 5 years. I don't know if you've been like super in depth of fandom the entire time or not, but it was kind of like these past few years we've been getting a lot, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Even if they never make like new music again, it's like there's so much that we have had, like all of these vinyl repressings. You got the U2s, you have all this news of side project things. Like prior to that, it kind of felt like the space was a little dead, you know. Like
I think a few people are still kind of in that mentality, and I think the audience is kind of split between like, you know, when I make a video where it's like a fake tweet and then the title is full caps with like 5 exclamation marks. It's like half the people there are like, oh yay, let's get excited together, and the other half are like, stop clickbaiting me. And it's like, okay, I can see both sides of the argument. But we've had nothing for all this time, and now in the last couple of years we're getting things coming. We're allowed to be a bit excited about it, okay?
Yep. You and Matthew just get to be in that boat of like hyping people up, and then other people being like, please
stop it. Yeah. It always shows on Twitter too. Like, I don't use Twitter that much, but like I love seeing the things where I open Twitter and it's just people screaming about Matthew Altruder. It's so funny. It's so funny.
That's like one of the reasons why I check Twitter. The other thing too is Matthew has a lot of things from the history of the days of Tally Hall. Like I remember you were able to like upload their Misery Fell like recording, but there's just been he has so much stuff. Like he's not just some random guy. He's the random guy. He's been there for a while.
He's mentioned in Hoods in the Woods.
Yeah.
Freetown Sound. Like, come on now. I don't think people give him enough credit. I think everyone's like all caught up in the fact that, oh, he's saying all these things and nothing's really happening. But they're looking past the fact that like stuff is happening. Like,
I know
it's been more accurate than it's ever been. Like, and maybe if and like, to be fair, like Matthew Altruder's saying these things, teasing, like it's obvious what he thinks, but he's not saying those things. You're just kind of taking those and thinking, Matthew Altruder is saying Tally Hall's gonna come back. This is crazy. Why is he being like this? When he's not really saying that. He's just kind of sprinkling the dust everywhere and letting the fandom go wild.
Or he leans into it a whole lot without like 100% saying it.
Yeah.
Cause that's been something where it's like prior years I was kind of used to him just being like, oh wow, we're gonna try asking Tally Hall to come to Sonic Lunch again. We're gonna try doing this. You're like, oh, Tally Hall something. And it always being something. We're like, okay, you know, there's potentially something cool, or he's just saying stuff.
Yeah.
But this year's like, he's weirdly confident.
Yeah, he's been bold with it. I just feel like if nothing happens, like the fandom's gonna go crazy on him. I don't think he could survive. I think, but then again, maybe there's a point where it's like, okay, he's gone too far now. Might as well just roll with it and pray to God that they show up at Sonic Lunch, or pray to God that they do something else. But honestly, either way, I'm very happy with how things are going now. And like, even if I personally, I do not think we're ever going to get a Tally Hall reunion. We're probably never going to get any more music from Tally Hall, not directly at least. But like, the members are doing other things. Like, it's not like it's completely silent, you know?
Right.
I'm very excited for the next Kojim Dip album. Very excited.
That's good.
I love Kojim Dip.
And I'm excited for Edu as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've enjoyed bits of Kojim Dip, but I'm not like, I haven't been as obsessed yet. Probably just because it takes a bit for me to get more into the like metal side of things, I guess.
That's fair. I mean, the first songs everybody gets into is Pluto 134340 and Moonwaltz. Yeah, those are the two. Yeah. But it does grow on you. I do not like that type of music, but it has grown on me a lot, for sure.
And we get Bora.
Yeah, exactly. We get Bora, of course. Oh, I saw this great video of Bora, like, I think it's Bora's only video uploaded on YouTube. And it's him singing Moonwaltz while playing the piano. And it's so beautiful. It's like, I watch that and it's like, it makes me love the song so much more. It's like the same thing with the Mind Electric, like the demos and stuff for all the Hawaii Part 2 songs. Like, it makes you appreciate the song so much more once you hear where it's come from.
For sure. Yeah, that was me, is like, before I got into Hawaii Part 2, I was listening to just all of the Mind Electric demos over and over again. And I just kind of spiraled into everything else because I'm like, I need to know more about this. I need to know more.
The island.
Then I remember hearing Labyrinth the first time and I was like, it's the demo.
Yeah. I love it when you listen to the songs and you can hear all the different components that are put together. It's obviously mainly the Mind Electric and Labyrinth, but yeah. I think my favorite demo, okay, first of all, Demo 4, obviously. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it's not the best one. It is the best one. But apart from that, my favorite demo is the Island to Thyself demo, because that one is just so good. I don't know what it is about it, but I absolutely love it. Yeah.
And that one has the extra verse in it too, right?
Yeah. Maybe we'll tangle tomorrow.
The sorrow.
The sorrow. Yeah. Also, another thing. Side note. I'm like 95% certain that the demo for the Island to Thyself is part of the story of Hawaii Part 2. But yeah, and I'm gonna include that in the video. I don't think many people are gonna love it, but I'm fairly certain that, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'm fairly certain that it is part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, granted, so many people's understanding of their interpretations of the story for Hawaii Part 2 come from the demos. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this Simon guy, you know?
Exactly. We have, it's got the bare bones of everything, so you gotta look at the bare bones if you want to understand it. Yeah.
Yes, but I love seeing theories and interpretations of Hawaii Part 2.
Same. It's the only things that I ever see from the American Musical subreddit. It's like, hey, I had this thought. It's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Oh, you know what as well? This is something I'm going to mention in my video. What is really, really cool is if you listen to the songs of Hawaii Part 2, and if you open the album, right? I'm talking to the listeners now, whoever's listening. If you open Hawaii Part 2 right now, and you listen to all the songs, and you go through them from start to finish, and you take note of the start of all of them, you'll notice that for the first half of the album, every song starts on an instrumental, and for the second half of the album, every song starts with a vocal, and it splits at the Mind Electric, and then before that it's all instrumental, and after that it's all vocals that it starts on. And I think that's very, very... Someone pointed that out. I was like, that is so cool. And there's also a thing that I'm going to go into in the video where it's like the first half of the album kind of takes place during the day, where the second half takes place during the night. And there's so many different like metaphors that are used to differ between daytime and nighttime. And I think that's really, really cool too. And there's definitely these purposeful ideas that are put into it to show a progression of the album that you kind of don't pick up on like immediately, but you can feel it. I don't know, like when you listen to Hawaii Part 2, you just feel it. And I think I would love to try to explain why we feel that. And I think that's what I'm going to try and do, hopefully.
So I guess going with that then, probably feeling a bit more like Variations might be the track 0 still. Because I know sometimes people debate that if it's the
Variations
first track or last track.
I think it's the track 0. To be honest, I think Variations on a Cloud is what Joe Hawley takes from Hawaii Part 2, because Joe Hawley has said before he doesn't want to really give what he thinks about Hawaii Part 2 fully, because it's meant to be an album that you can interpret in whatever way you want. That is why it was made. But Joe Hawley, I did think, mention in an interview something about how, because I mean the event of 9/11 is clearly very important to him, and there's lots, when you really look at Hawaii Part 2, there are actually loads of metaphors for it within the songs. Obviously, there's Variations on a Cloud, but I think Variations on a Cloud is like, here's the album, and then here's what I take from it. Do whatever you want with the rest of it. And I think that's really quite cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way of looking at it, because sometimes people are like confused, like Joe thinks that the album is about what?
Yeah, but like no, like the whole point is that you're meant to think whatever you want to think.
Yeah.
Use your mind. You know, use your creativity.
For sure. But yeah, then going back with like Mind Electric being like the center and split. Yeah, I never really noticed how the second half starts off with the vocals. That's really cool. But it is something that I did notice. I'm like, okay, it's the middle on the vinyl. You know, it's the first side ends with the first reverse part of the Mind Electric, and the next part starts with the unreversed thing. Yeah. Another thing I remember discovering too is at that like middle point, there's the reversed voice that says Part 2.
Yeah.
And so it's like, whoa. It's as soon as you like get into that second half of the album, even if it doesn't split exactly down the middle of the Mind Electric, that is the center point. That
is meant to be where the album flips. That's that. I mean, ultimately, that's where the main character changes. You know what I mean? So things are gonna change.
Yeah, I love music, man.
I know, same. It's honestly my whole life. Genuinely, I love it so much, and I would love to do videos on other artists too. I know people wouldn't watch them as much, but like, I don't just mean Jack Stauber, Will Wood, Lemon Demon, which don't get me wrong, I'm going to get to because they make great stuff. But like, I mean, I think my favorite band of all time is Pink Floyd, and I'd love to do Pink Floyd stuff because Pink Floyd is awesome. And actually, I also mentioned Pink Floyd in my Mr. Moon video that I'm going to do, because I'm pretty sure there's a reference to Pink Floyd in Bring Her Along, which I think is cool. But yeah, and there's loads of other bands that I think kind of do the same kind of thing as Tally Hall, where they have these themes underlying all the way through. But because they tackle it in a different way, I kind of want to tackle them in a different way at the same time as well. And you know, maybe it wouldn't be the best for the people who just like Tally Hall, but I've got to do something else at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. As mentioned, you feel like you've covered a lot of things, and you're wanting to encourage people to keep making their own theories. But there's a whole lot of songs out there in the world.
There's a lot of songs, and there's a lot of good music. Yeah. Too much.
What are some of your personal recommendations?
Okay, well, first of all, Dark Side of the Moon is an album I think everyone should listen to, and it's an album that I will make a video on because I love it so much and I love the ideas in it. And sticking with Pink Floyd, I also think the second best album that he's done is Wish You Were Here. Shine On You Crazy Diamond is really quite good. In the same kind of sphere, King Crimson is really good. I have one of their albums. The Court of the Crimson King is what people will know, but I also recommend you listen to In the Wake of Poseidon by King Crimson. And I think if you like that kind of, progressive rock sphere, it takes you down all these... I mean, what I've noticed recently as well, which is like, I've tried to usually stay clear of really popular artists because I find they're usually quite generic because obviously they're popular. But when it comes to ones like Pink Floyd, I've now realised they're popular. These ones are popular because they're good. And that's cool. And I think that's also why Tally Hall's gotten so big recently. It's like people have started to realise that these guys are good. And that's why they're getting popular. I think that's cool. Yes. But yeah, definitely would recommend Pink Floyd. 100%. Closing thoughts. Tally Hall's really cool. That's my closing thought. My closing thought is people need to stop trying to make content out of nothing and start trying to make content out of the content. There's so much there to be explored. There's so many different perspectives that you can take. And obviously when I make a video, the interpretations that I take are from my own experience. Everybody has different experiences. And I genuinely really encourage people to try and put their own spin on these songs and take out of it what they feel like they should take out of it. Because that is there's nothing better than that. That's the point of music. And if Tally Hall's not making any more music, you've got all this amazing stuff here that people haven't... I don't think people have explored this music enough yet. I think they're like, oh, this is a good song. Oh, I love Banana Man. Oh, I love The Rule of Everything. They made the funny memes out of it. And it's like, yeah, obviously, that's great. That shows that the music is good. Now let's talk about the lyrics as well. We've had 13 years to sit on why the music's good. Let's take it a little bit further. That's my final note.
Kind of jumping on that, I would also... Something I've thought about and I would love to see more of is people talking about the internet show and the skits and the characters in them. Because, people talk about the tallies a lot, but there's characters in there. We need more love.
I love the internet show. It's so good. I think everyone should watch it. Obviously a lot of it is outdated, but considering when they made it and how much of it is still really funny, it's so good.
Yes. Yeah, well, thank you for joining me for recording the podcast. I am very glad to just talk about music meanings and other random things.
Thanks for inviting me. And if you do run out of guests at whatever point, I'll just release the Hawaii Part 2 video and then we'll talk about that.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for listening to Tally Talks. Be sure to check out Tallyball on YouTube if you haven't already. If you would like a shout out in an upcoming Tally Talks episode or in an Emmatronics video, check out the links in the description or visit tallytalks.com. If you give to help a family in Gaza, I will give you a shout out. Just let me know how you'd like to be credited in the Google form. If you have any comments to share or would like to ask about being a guest on the podcast, please email podcast@awesomejedi.com. Thank you and have a good day. By Tally Hall.